or not. The odds are increasing exponentially that you're going to encounter a problem. Even if you timely reinstate, you run into a problem with the bureaucracy of the bank being able to respond to your efforts to reinstate. Even though they may be in the wrong, the sale of the property could still take place. You may have legal recourse as a consequence of it, but then you're now finding yourself walking into a lawyer's office and saying, I've got this issue. And the lawyer's saying, great! Did you bring your checkbook? And you're writing checks. You say, well, I don't want to write a check. Well, that's unfortunate. Then I can't help you. And that's the reality of your situation. So even if you have the ability, I was involved in a case last year where we had to sue a bank over the right of reinstatement because the bank had messed up because the client did timely exercise the right of reinstatement. But once the bank realized their error, they started sending the money back. And they started engaging in all sorts of bad behaviors. And then we started getting involved in a fight with them. And it just started growing. The client ended up racking up a huge legal bill. And she still had to bring the loan current. So unless you got the money for the legal bill and the money to reinstate, don't play games like that. If you play beat the bank, more times than not, the bank's going to beat you. So if it's on your mind to reinstate, don't wait. Do it. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting caught in the battle with the bank. Okay, that's the right of reinstatement, the right to bring the loan current. Right of redemption, that's your legal right to pay off the loan in its entirety. So if you find yourself day number 3 before the sale of the property, and you still want to hold on to the property, and the bank says no to reinstatement, well, you can still keep the property if you pay off the loan in its entirety, all $500,000 of it. I recognize that that's not much of an alternative in a down market, but in an up market, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But I want you to understand is if you're within that 5 days before the sale of the property, well, that's what you got. That's all you got. This is what a notice of default looks like. It'll say something like notice of default and election to sell under the deed of trust. This is what a notice of sale looks like. Here and there it gives the time, date, location of the notice. So if you see notices like this, you know you're in a non-judicial foreclosure.
Can you buy your own home at a foreclosure sale?
I have yet to encounter anybody capable of doing it. It begs the question.
It begs the question. Unless you have cash.
Yeah, you have to have cash. You have to be in cash. It's one of those things in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I've never seen that happen. Doesn't mean I've never seen it happen. The problem you have with that is let me get into alternatives, and you'll see why that's not realistic. It would become evident why that's not realistic. Okay, we already talked about that. This is a judicial foreclosure. If you're on the receiving end of it, we're seeing them nowadays. This is one of the ones we've recently seen. This is one that was done by Washington Mutual Bank. If you get a piece of paper that says summons on it, it's got funny numbering in the left-hand margin. Do not self-help, run to a lawyer. You've been sued. And you've got time constraints on getting and responding to that. Okay. Now, we're going to start talking about 580B and 580D protection. These are the exceptions to the rule. All this is leading up to a discussion about short sales. Foreclosure outside of the court, 580D, we're going to start with a discussion about purchase money loans. Because it's the easiest of the two to address. Purchase money loans is under 580B of the Code of Civil Procedure. what it says, what it basically says is this: if the proceeds of the loan are used to purchase a single-family residence, 4 units or less, that is owner-occupied at the time of purchase. Owner-occupied. Somebody asked questions about a secondary residence. Owner-occupied. Can you occupy more than one house at a time? Not really. Owner-occupied. Then the borrower has no obligation to pay. Period. What you guys said? If the proceeds of the loan are used to purchase a single-family residence, not a commercial property, not retail property, not an office building, a single-family residence, not an apartment complex. Well, no, it's got to be a single-family residence that's owner-occupied. You're living there. Again, if you're trying to, if you find yourself making arguments like that, you're writing checks. Getting crafty with the bank can be expensive. So I caution everybody about that. You can't get crafty with the bank and not expect them to challenge you. But if they challenge you, guess what you're doing? You're reaching out in a checkbook and you're writing a check. You're to a lawyer. If you try and self-help, bad things are going to happen. Okay? So it's got to be a single-family residence of 4 units or less that is owner-occupied. What happens if there's a refinance? If you're a homeowner, if you're a resident, you all have purchase money loans to begin with. But what happens if you start to get into this refinancing frenzy? Colleen knows.
Personally liable.
It could be. She says personally liable. A lot of the time, that's true. A lot of the time, that's true. If your purchase money loan is with Wells Fargo, and then you go back, and it's for $500,000, and you go back to Wells Fargo, and you refinance that loan at a better rate for $500,000. So the first loan was with Wells Fargo, the second loan is with Wells Fargo. Is it a purchase money loan, a second loan, a purchase money loan? It is. It's a trick question. It's a trick. It's a purchase money loan. What if your first loan is with Wells Fargo? You know, I moved my checking account over to Bank of America. I'm going to go to Bank of America this time. And you refinance with Bank of America. Is that loan with Bank of America a purchase money? You lost 580B protection. You start compromising 580B protection when you refinance with a different lender, or you start pulling out material amounts of money. I'm going to talk about first and second purchase money here in a second. It's a good question. I'll talk about it in a second. What's that?
Same lender, it's still purchase.
As long as you're not pulling out any significant amounts of money. If you start pulling out money, then it becomes a question of fact for a judge or jury to decide at the time of trial. And that's unfortunate because for you to get there, you're writing checks.
So are you saying that if you purchase the home that you're living in it and you refinance the same place you increase your loan that way, then they tried to foreclose on it,
Right.
they can't do it.
You have a defense to it. You have what's called an affirmative defense to it, and it's called 580B protection. Kind of important to know that. Okay. What about foreclosure outside of court? That one's a little tricky because this one, 580D protection, has to do with the foreclosure. So I created this darn thing to illustrate how it works. And this is under 580D of the Code of Civil Procedure. D is in David. Okay. California doesn't use mortgages. We're using deeds of trust. You got a home loan, you got to probably have a deed of trust. Okay. Inside of a deed of trust is kind of just like a testamentary document called a trust. You have 3 parties to it. You have a trustor, the guy creating it, the beneficiary, the person for whose benefit the assets of the trust are maintained, managed, and the trustee, the guy managing the property. Okay? So in a deed of trust, the trustor, it ends with the letter R, therefore that's the